Last week, I flew out to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to attend the Air Force's All-Star Leadership event. And while I was really there to check out some aircraft and speak to some air crews, what I saw surprised me. As the Air Force Recruiting Service has explained in past statements, there is no single silver bullet or game-changing strategy the Air Force can use to instantly reconnect the American people with its airmen. The only path forward is in, quote, increasing community outreach, getting out into the communities and reintroducing ourselves to America. I don't just mean getting outside the gates of Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio or Altus, Oklahoma. We must get out and provide meaningful exposure to our men and women in uniform across the nation, in the hard-to-recruit areas, and in all the places where Americans are not likely to know anyone in the military. And that is exactly what I saw in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. To tell you the truth, I flew out there to poke around some aircraft at the Air National Guard base that's co-located with the city's international airport during the Air Force's All-Star Leadership event. And as I interviewed pilots and aircrew for some short video pieces that I'll be posting later, I watched as hundreds of high school students poured onto the flight line, milling about the KC-135, C-17s, and the F-16D that I was also there to see. What I saw was not a recruiting event as I know them. In fact, I spoke to very few recruiters at all while I was there. Instead, airmen from a wide variety of occupational specialties set up shop around tables or in their respective aircraft, answering questions and just generally letting these kids explore the machines they work on, in, or alongside every day. One airman showed off 3D printed toys and aircraft components, answering questions about the printers the Air Force is using to change the way it repairs aircraft. Another showed off different aircrew equipment and gear, while others explained airborne refueling, cargo operations, and more. It was an environment utterly bereft of advertising or the pressure sale of a recruiter in dire need of hitting a quota. It was just young men and women in uniform sharing their real lived experiences with high school students who were genuinely interested in learning more about the realities of their lives. In fact, as I interviewed a pair of flight nurses about their time in various aircraft, a pair of high school girls lined up behind me, and after a few minutes, they expressed their disgust in how long I was taking with an audible sigh. They were that excited to speak to these airmen about what they did, and that had such an impact on me that I decided I needed to make this video. I felt like the Grinch when his heart grew 3 sizes, watching these girls get excited about service. As I thought back to something my wife told me nearly 2 decades ago, that it never even occurred to her that she could have become something like a fighter pilot. And maybe all it could have taken to send her life in a completely different direction was one conversation with someone who knew that she could, and who'd look her in the eye and tell her so. If we want to prevent the next big war before it starts, it can only happen through a strong, deterrent military posture that makes it clear that armed conflict is not worth the price of admission. And while fighter jets and bombers and aircraft carriers and tanks all play a role in that combat calculus, they are completely worthless without well-trained men and women who are willing to carry the nation's burden on their backs. And what I saw in Pittsburgh last week was the first time in a long time that I felt confident that a new generation might just be willing to help carry that load. They just need to be shown a reason to believe that it could be worth it for them. They need someone who knows they can, to look them in the eyes and tell them so. And real talk, me to you, I was so happy to see that happening that this salty old Marine flew home wearing an Air Force cap on my head. And it didn't even catch on fire.